All right, so this is a spoiler review. If you didn't like Thor Dark World back in 2013, then you definitely will appreciate it more now in 2022. So I've always said that Thor Dark World is one of my favorite MCU movies, one of my favorite MCU films. Thor Love and Thunder will make people appreciate Thor Dark World, because every time I say Thor Dark World is one of my favorite movies, everybody always say I'm crazy, or they say Thor Dark World was garbage. And I'd be like, how? And they explain stuff from the comic books, and I'd be like, okay, I understand. But I never knew the Dark Elf storyline in the comic books, so I've always thought Thor Dark World is one of the best MCU movies. Thor Love and Thunder, to me, is borderline garbage. I give it a 6 out of 10, and that's only because it did introduce new characters and storylines that I'm excited to see in the future. But as far as this movie right here, I wouldn't even go see this movie for a second time in the theaters. Usually every MCU movie that come out, even the Ant-Man movies, I've went and saw twice in theaters. This one, I'm not watching this again till it come on Disney Plus. And then I won't even watch the whole movie. I'll probably just watch bits and pieces, like I do the Ant-Man movies. This is like down there with Ant-Man. Matter of fact, Ant-Man is better than Thor Love and Thunder, in my opinion. The movie opened up with Christian Bale's character, Gore the God Butcher, like praying to the gods on some empty desert planet. And, you know, they don't answer his prayers. His daughter dies, and he's wandering through the empty planet. And he go from like a desert all of a sudden to like this beautiful Adam and Eve looking garden, where it's like creatures, and kind of like in Shang-Chi where they finally made it through the forest. It looked kind of like that. And he see this dude, I guess it's a guy. It kind of looked like, I don't know what you want to call it, CGI or the graphics. It kind of looked, it was shiny. A lot of people had a problem with that. I didn't have no problem with that. But how they ran through this scene, it was whack. They really didn't explain what was going on. They really didn't give no names or nothing like that. The dialogue was kind of weak. So they just basically rushed through this scene. This was the first scene. And then it's like he talking to this guy, having like a crazy, weird conversation. And the guy basically tell him like, fuck you, you're a peasant. Our purpose as gods is not to help you. And all of the gods' friends and minions, they're laughing. And so all of a sudden this sword come out of nowhere. The necro sword come out of nowhere. Like, it comes out of nowhere. It's in the garden where the god is like chilling and eating grapes. And all of a sudden, the sword starts calling to Gore, and Gore's like, oh, he listening to it. And then the guy that's sitting right there, he's like, oh, that's the sword that can kill us, and blah, blah, blah. And then in my head, I'm like, why the fuck y'all just got the sword laying there in the grass like that? It's not in no case. It's not in no tomb or no secret hiding place. It's just laying in the grass right there. So that was garbage. But anyway, Gore grabbed the sword, and then he stabbed the dude in the neck, and the dude just bleed gold, and he just disappeared, kind of like what Odin did in Thor Ragnarok, like the gold dust, like Frigga did too in Thor Dark World. Thor Dark World is way better than Thor Ragnarok. But anyway, my bad. Thor Dark World is way better than Thor Love and Thunder. But anyway, so then they cut to Thor running through the kind of like what they did in Wonder Woman 2, where they went like told like a storyline, like saw her grow up from kid to woman running through the field and stuff like that. And then it fast forward to him with Guardians of the Galaxy. Like they in mid-battle, kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, how they start off in the battle and they just kind of like arguing with each other, like showing that, you know, this is what they do every day, basically. Like they really not afraid no more. This is just a part of their everyday job. So they kind of like borrowed stuff from other movies. They copied from other movies throughout this entire 2 hours, which is one of the reasons I say it's borderline garbage, because like some of the ideas were, and some of the concepts were recycled Hollywood concepts. I'll talk more about that in a couple minutes. So then the opening scene was like 20, 30 minutes, and they did all that just so they can introduce these two screaming goats that they was on this planet, and Thor and Guardians helped these people, you know, overcome their battle, and the people gave them two screaming goats as a present. So Thor had these screaming goats throughout the whole movie. So after this battle, they gave him the screaming goats. He left the Guardians of the Galaxy. They went their separate ways. Thor and Korg went back to like they went and did their own thing or whatever, basically. So then they go to the hospital where Natalie Portman character is, Jane Foster. Her and Darcy are in the hospital talking about how Jane got cancer and such. So Jane is telling Darcy that she's gonna figure out a way to beat it, and Darcy is telling Jane that, Jane, you need to relax and submit, basically. You know, Jane is a modern woman. Jane Foster is a modern woman, independent. I don't need no man, blah, blah, blah. She had Thor of all people, of all the men she could meet, she had Thor, and she still was talking about she didn't need a man. Like a goddamn modern woman. Shout out and rest in peace to Kevin Samuels. So Darcy telling Jane, like, Jane, you need to chill out. You got cancer, motherfucker. Like, relax. Jane's like, no, I'm gonna find a way to beat it. I can figure it out. And she calculating stuff in her head. So then finally she go to the museum where the Thor hammer is. So Thor's hammer got broke in Thor Ragnarok by Hela. So I guess now it's in the museum, like in the case. So she go to the museum and she passed by the hammer. She walked by the hammer and the hammer like starts glowing and stuff like that. So that was the end of that scene. That scene is over with. It goes to New Asgard, where Valkyrie is running the show. So now New Asgard is like, it's a big city now. It's a big, they got Asgard technology throughout the city or throughout the town. Before, you know, it was just a small town. It was like kind of like the town where Aquaman used to go and chill out. And back in Justice League. Now they got Asgard technology mixed in with the small town. And now like they get visitors from other towns and stuff like that. And they into politics now, and Valkyrie is, opening up ice cream shops and, shooting Old Spice commercials and stuff like that. So Thor shows up to talk to them, and then Gore, the butcher, shows up. And he starts causing trouble. He brings out these shadow monsters that you could barely see, which was garbage. Like, half the time, you don't even know what's going on. It's kind of like the Transformers fight scenes. Like, you can't tell what's going on. Is that a hand? Is that a leg? Did he just uppercut him? Did she just, like, do a backflip, or she just teleport right there? But anyway, so now Thor and Valkyrie is fighting these shadow monsters. Some of the Asgardians are helping also, but the kids are still in the house. They looking through the windows. So then, these shadow monsters that you could barely see, they start getting a little momentum, and then all of a sudden a hammer comes out of nowhere and starts knocking a bunch of them out. And then it comes back, and the hammer is just flying around knocking shadow monsters out. And Thor's trying to see, like, who is that? Like, what's going on? Because he knows it's Mjolnir, whatever the fuck the name of the hammer is. Mjolnir, Mjolnir, whatever it is. And then, so he finally see, and the hammer goes back, and it's Jane Foster. Now she in the Mighty Thor costume. And in this whole movie, she fought better than Thor, which I didn't have no problem with, but I felt that was kind of whack as far as the storyline. If this was the first Thor movie, then maybe, yeah, okay. But we seen Thor go through all type of battles and stuff like that, and had all type of hundreds and thousands of years of preparation for battle. And Jane Foster just shows up and she fighting better than him. That was kind of whack storyline wise. They just threw that in there and they rushed it so they could have this woman, I am woman, hear me roar type of feel for the movie. Which was fine, because I didn't have no problem with it, because I liked the action scenes. If it wasn't for Jane Foster, the action would have been garbage in this movie. The action was borderline garbage in this movie, but if it wasn't for her, it would have been garbage. But they still, that didn't make sense. But anyway, and then they didn't explain, when she started fighting or whatever. They just threw that out there and left it out there. So now Gore, he ends up, instead of, he's losing the battle at this point once Jane shows up, because now it's Jane Foster, it's Thor, it's Korg, it's Valkyrie, it's the Asgardians, the adult Asgardians that are in the town, all fighting against Gore and these shadow monsters. So now Thor and the rest of the Asgardians are winning. So now Gore, the God Butcher, is like, fuck this. So he disappears and he goes and kidnaps the kids instead, and then just disappears. So he goes and takes all the Asgardian kids, all the other kids from different planets that were in Asgardian, he takes them and disappears. So now that's the plot of the movie. They trying to get the kids back, basically. So he go to the Shadow Realm with the kids. And Gore's plan is to lure Thor to the Shadow Realm so he can steal Thor's axe, which can control the Bifrost, and use that to open up eternity, which is like a secret gateway, kind of like the Soul World, like the Soul Stone. It's kind of something like that. So the Bifrost is the key to opening up the gateway to eternity. And then whoever goes to eternity, they get one wish anything they can. So Thor, Valkyrie, and Jane, and then they go back to the Shadow Realm where Gore at. Thor and Valkyrie and Jane and Korg, they all trying to stop him because they think, since he's been butchering gods, they think once he gets to eternity, he's gonna wish to have all of the gods killed. But they don't know about Gore's daughter that died. They don't know they don't even explain where he came from or nothing. All Thor and Jane and Valkyrie know is this is just a random villain that showed up out of nowhere. And then they have a fight. It's a fight scene, but it was real quick. You really couldn't tell really what was going on. If you go to a movie theater that got bad lighting, you ain't gonna know what's going on really. So they have a quick 2-minute fight, and as Thor something happened. Thor's like, fuck this, let's get out of here. So they get he summons the Bifrost with the axe. So as they floating away, for some reason, I don't know how, they just did this for plot convenience. because the axe, bam, you put the axe in the ground and the Bifrost coming in, you're supposed to float away with the axe in the air first. But for some reason, when Thor floated away, he was upside down. So that his feet was going in the air first and the axe is right here. And Gore the God Butcher is standing on the ground, grabs the axe, and then Thor just floats away through the Bifrost. So Thor, Jane Foster, Valkyrie, they all fly back to New Asgard through the Bifrost. Once they land, they don't got the axe no more to summon the Bifrost. So now Gore, he withstood all of that energy, and so now Gore has the Bifrost axe and the Necro sword back in the Shadow Realm. So now he's walking towards the gateway to eternity, and then it shows Thor and Valkyrie and Jane on Earth like, how are we gonna get back? Like, what are we gonna do? We don't know where the kids are. Now he's gonna blah, blah, blah. So that was kind of weak. That was garbage because they didn't show him butcher any gods really, except the first one in the first scene. They didn't show him fighting any other god. They didn't even show any other gods really. Until Thor has an idea to go to Zeus for help. Zeus stays in this city where like there's a great number of gods. They all live in this magical city in this secret place. So Thor's like, man, this guy Gore is powerful. We need help. So they all go to see Zeus to get help from Zeus and the other gods from around the universe that are all there just chilling. So then they go to Zeus for help. And Zeus tells Thor no. And then they steal Zeus's lightning bolt. Thor, Valkyrie, and Jane basically attack Zeus and steals his lightning bolt. Like that's his power, that's his weapon. Like Thor has the hammer and the axe. Zeus has the lightning bolt. Like Captain America has the shield, Zeus has the lightning bolt. So they steal the lightning bolt from Zeus since Zeus won't help them, and they just leave. And I guess Zeus's lightning bolt is the same thing as the Bifrost weapon. So Zeus's lightning bolt teleports Thor and them back to the Shadow Realm. And they have another fight sequence. They go back to Earth, and once they steal Zeus's weapon, some kind of way Jane, she gets sick. She gets like too sick. I guess it was from the battle and all the commotion and stuff like that. She gets too sick, and now she got to go to the hospital. So Valkyrie is injured. She's like, I can't, like I'm done, I'm calling off, like you on your own, Thor. Jane is sick in the hospital. She wants to go, but Thor's telling her, Jane, no, because if you go, you might die. So Thor begged Jane to stay at the hospital on Earth, and she said okay. So Thor uses Zeus's lightning bolt to teleport to the Shadow Realm so he could save the kids, so he could stop Gore and try to save the day. When he gets there, he does get the kids some kind of way. And what happens is, once Thor frees the kids and they get ready to, Gore has used Thor's axe to start opening up the door to eternity. So now Thor freed the kids, but they're all still there watching this. Thor's like, I have to stop this guy first before I take you guys back to Earth. So then while Thor is having that conversation with the kids, Gore the God Butcher summons those shadow monsters again. So now there's like dozens of shadow monsters and Gore plus the Necro Sword against Thor. So now Thor is like, you know what, I'm gonna need help. So he turns to the kids and he enchants them with the power of Thor for a limited time only. So it's like 20 kids. He gives them all like the power of Thor. You know how Odin whispered over the hammer, over Thor's hammer, whoever is worthy and blah, blah, blah. That's what Thor did over the kids. So now they all the kids they're still kids size, they're still kids, but now they all have the power of Thor. So now it's like 20 kids and Thor, plus Gore the God Butcher and the Shadow Monster. So basically, Thor goes straight for Gore, and the kids are destroying the Shadow Monsters. So Thor and the God Butcher are fighting, but for some reason Thor is losing. So now all of a sudden, like perfect plot convenience, like perfect timing, like a lot of stuff, Jane pops in with the hammer and on the horse, on Valkyrie's horse, that can teleport through other dimensions, just like the Bifrost can do. So now Jane is back in the Shadow Realm, and Thor's looking like, no, Jane, I told you to stay on Earth. But Jane's like, I don't care, you need my help. So Jane come in fucking shit up. Jane fought better than Thor the whole movie. So Jane basically, Jane and Thor basically get the Necro Sword from Gore, and Jane destroys it with Thor's hammer. And then, but by then, it's too late. The door to eternity is already open. So Gore goes through, and he goes through, and it's like it's some like Galactus, like it's a lot of Galactus, Celestial, Cain the Conqueror Easter eggs in this movie. It is, because the temple where they doing all this fighting, this last battle, it's like statues. It's a lot of Cain the Conqueror. It's a lot of Cain the Conqueror, Galactus, Celestial Easter eggs in this movie. So the door to eternity open. Gore goes through. He goes to like the statue that's there, and then he like makes a wish or whatever. And while he's doing that, Thor and Jane is like, they went through the gateway also, but Jane is on the ground because like she's human now. She getting ready to die. So Thor is like talking to Jane, basically, but he watching Gore from a distance. So Gore ends up wishing to have his daughter back, and she comes back, and what he wished for was to have his daughter back, but with the power of a god. I guess so that way she'll always be protected. So his daughter comes back. Gore ends up dying like from his injuries, and before Gore dies, he asks Thor, can you please protect my daughter? Because Thor is a god, even though he doesn't act like a god, he is a god. So Gore still believes in the gods and stuff like that. And I guess through his time battling and interacting with Thor, he sees that Thor is not like the rest of the gods. He sees love, I guess, the love in Thor, because of Jane. So Jane is dying, Thor's holding her, Gore is dying, and Gore's daughter is holding him. And Gore looks to Thor like, can you just please look after my daughter? Can you please protect her? And then Thor looking at him like he want to say fuck you, but he looking at him like he understand, like, okay, no problem, like, because he holding Jane and he feel the love for Jane. And then he sees, and like finally Thor realizes like what Gore was doing all of this for, because they never explained it in the beginning or in the middle of the movie. So now once the daughter comes back, Thor realizes like he didn't wish for all the gods to be dead. He just did all this because he wants his daughter back. So Thor's like, okay, I'll protect her. So then Gore dies, Jane dies. It goes to the next scene. Thor's now like protecting the girl and taking her on battles with him, I guess to train her so she can wield the axe, she can wield the hammer. It doesn't show her wielding the hammer, but I assume she can wield the hammer because she can wield the axe. And so it ends by her and Thor like going to some planet to battle, like to save this race of people or whatever. And then that's it. And then there's two post-credit scenes. The first one is Zeus. Zeus is alive. After the battle with Thor, they thought they killed him, but he's still, well, the audience, we thought Zeus was dead because Valkyrie took the lightning bolt. I think it was Valkyrie or Jane. One of them took the lightning bolt and threw it right through Zeus's, right, his midsection. They threw it right through Zeus's midsection, and he had left a big ass hole in him. So we thought Zeus was dead, but he's alive. So he's sitting on his chair on the steps, at his throne, talking, basically monologuing. And then he like, the gods are a joke. We have to make people fear the gods again. And then he looks up like, can you do this favor for me? And then like they show Hercules, and he's like, do this favor for me, my son. And then Hercules is like, I will, my father. And then that's the first they call that a mid-credit scene because technically all the credits ain't over yet. So the end credit scene is Jane getting into Valhalla, where Asgardians go, when they die in battle. I guess it's like their version of heaven. So Jane got into the Asgardian heaven, Valhalla. Heimdall's there to greet her, through the gates. And that's the second end credit scene. So overall, like, Christian Bale's performance to me was garbage because they didn't give him many scenes. They didn't give him many lines, and the scenes and lines that they did give him, it's like I was watching Pennywise the Clown instead of Gore the God Butcher. I've been hearing all this praise about Gore the God Butcher, about how he was one of Thor's toughest opponents and stuff like that. And then I'm like, he's like acting like Pennywise the Clown, like he doing all this goofy shit. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, he's a regular person. Like, why he not talking like a regular person that's just possessed? Like, he didn't talk like that before. Like, so why the fuck is he talking like that? That's what got on my nerves. He talking like Pennywise the Clown. If y'all seen it, y'all know who Pennywise the Clown is. And then he was like he would do the goofy kitty laughs, and then he would like, he would start looking like him, like with the black goo on his mouth. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this supposed to be Gore the God Butcher. This is supposed to be a regular being, even though they from different planets. It's supposed to be a regular being, human-like, that is hardened and hurt from the fact that the gods did not save them and that his daughter died. He's supposed to be like man-like, not like oh, but if I tell you, then you won't listen. Like, what the fuck? So I didn't like his performance. Was garbage to me. I think he knew they wasn't gonna have him in that many scenes, and he just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna copy this character from this movie, and then make millions of dollars off of this bullshit. That's basically what it seemed like he did. So his performance was garbage. Chris Hemsworth's performance was garbage. The Guardians of the Galaxy, their performance was garbage. It wasn't no point. It wasn't no point really of having them in the movie. It wasn't really no point of. The only point of having them in the movie was so they could introduce these fucking goats that Thor was riding, like Santa's sleigh all goddamn movie. That's the only reason. So that was like 25 minutes of runtime for no reason. It was a lot of stupid dialogue in this movie. It was a lot of just dialogue that was unnecessary and that was not funny. They tried to make it funny, but it's like kids wrote this damn movie sometimes. That's what it seemed like. Some of these scenes is like some teenagers wrote this bullshit. And so I'm like, I want to see the action movie. Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League is one of my top 5 superhero slash comic book movies ever, because I'm tired of seeing all these love stories, these forced love stories in these fucking action movies. These people is saving planets, universes. They don't got time to be sitting there worried about if a woman loved them or not. They don't give a shit. So why is Hollywood putting this in every fucking movie? All of these, okay, so this one was Thor Love and Thunder. I get they had to put it in this one, but it was too much unnecessary dialogue from other characters that didn't need to be in here. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy dialogue, that was unnecessary. Just show them with Guardians of the Galaxy, show Thor getting the fucking goats, and they gonna leave anyway, so just get rid of them in like 5 minutes. Why the fuck is they sitting there talking for 10 minutes about nothing? Thor did that a lot of times in this movie, and it was just whack. I want Thor from Thor Dark World. I want Thor from the first Thor. He was humorous, he was silly, but he was serious too. And he meant business. And he didn't play no games when it came to war and getting this shit over with. This Thor, it was some bullshit. They just threw some bullshit together. So that's why I say it's borderline garbage. It's not garbage. I gave it 6 out of 10 because I did like the fact that they introduced Zeus and that whole God world, that God city. I did like that storyline. I wish they could have spent more time with those characters. I did like the imagery, the colors, how they went to the Shadow Realm and it was black and white, and how, they had the color popping in and out. I did like that. The fight scenes, logically they were good, but how they executed them was garbage because you could barely see what was going on. They created these shadow monsters for this movie that was garbage because you could barely see them. They should have just used regular minions or regular monsters or whatever. And then when they would fight Gore, like every punch, they switched camera angles. Every move, they switched a camera angle. So you could do this, and it's one camera angle, and then you could go like this, and then it's a different camera angle. So it's like you looking like what the fuck going on? Like the character's not moving all over the screen. So why the fuck is the camera angle going upside down and all this shit? That was annoying. That was garbage. Cause why these actors and actresses and stuntmen train months and months for this movie? Why would you just not show their skills? You could show a straight shot of people doing 2 minutes of fighting, 2 minutes of choreography. Like, why you can't just show that? And then add the CGI or the animation to it. Instead, they doing camera angles like, you doing all this shit, like. But the action scenes, how they wanted them to be, I see what they was doing, but I don't like how they were switching camera angles. That was annoying. That was garbage. I think that was bad editing. Even though it's supposed to be Hollywood and he's supposed to be professionals, these motherfuckers just threw this movie together. Cause I can edit. I know how to edit. And that's bad editing. You're supposed to edit videos so that the people that's watching them can get a clear understanding of what's going on. And people couldn't get a clear understanding of what's going on. Jane's fight scenes was cold. I liked how the hammer would go in pieces and fly all over the place and then come back together and like in one piece. I liked that part of the movie. That was cold. Jane had better moves than Thor. Thor really didn't do shit this whole movie, honestly. His ass was just annoying. I did like the scene where he was talking to the kids, like calming them down, and how he, told them to gather around and just grab whatever, and I'm finna enchant y'all with Thor's power. I did like that part. But as far as them just destroying the shadow monsters with ease, that was garbage. That was just garbage. They could have put some kind of extra stakes in there and they didn't. Gore the God Butcher, he didn't really do shit either. He's supposed to be one of the coldest villains in Thor history. He didn't do shit. Valkyrie, she was in it, but she just gave up. She just gave up on everybody. So I don't like how they wrote that scene. That was garbage. They just threw this movie together, basically. And I did like the introduction back to the Bifrost and to the Broken Hammer. I do like the abilities of the Broken Hammer, but I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. Thor Dark World, to me, is an 8 out of 10. Only thing I didn't like in Thor Dark World was the final battle between Thor and Malachi. Not the part where they on his planet and Loki dies. I'm talking about the part where they go back to Earth and it's just Thor and Malachi going back and forth through the portals. I thought they could have did that for a couple minutes, but then they should have had an actual fight sequence, and they really didn't. So I thought that was kind of garbage to sit and go through that whole movie and then to just end it like that with the ship smashing on him without no real fights. I think that was garbage. That's the only thing I ain't like about Thor Dark World. Other than that, I think Thor Dark World was an 8 out of 10. Probably, I think, really, honestly, now after seeing this movie, I'm gonna give it a 8.5 out of 10. Or a 9 out of 10, honestly. Because back then, that's stuff I had never seen before. That's stuff that I had never seen before in the movie. Thor played his character perfectly, in my opinion, in Thor Dark World. And everybody played their character perfectly. Asgard was displayed and presented perfectly. Now it's being presented as this American bullshit. It is on Earth, so I guess that's what happens once you leave your planet and come to Earth. Come to, all these motherfucking idiots on Earth. So basically, Asgard is full of gay people and motherfucking bimbos. Thor was a bimbo the whole movie, basically. They used to use that term back in the 90s, for airheads, women that were pretty but just stupid. That's what Thor is in this movie. Thor is a male bimbo. A membo. Like Seinfeld. Hey, what do you say? Hey, Tony, hey, like the episode on Seinfeld. Hey, Tony, hey. That's how Thor is in this whole fucking movie, and it's annoying. But overall, I give it a 6 out of 10. So this is my first movie review. I'm gonna start doing movie reviews more often. Let me know what you think about Thor Love and Thunder. I thought it was like borderline garbage. The new characters, if it wasn't for the new characters and the new storylines, that really saved this movie, because other than that, this movie would have been like no point. I would say this is at the bottom. I would say Eternals is better than this, in my opinion. Because Eternals, I actually wanted to go back and watch good chunks of that movie, so because it was, oh yeah, what about this? What about that? But this, Thor Love and Thunder, Eternals was better. Shang-Chi was obviously way better, without question. Thor Dark World was better. This is like a parody movie, basically. That's what this is. Like Hot Shots and all that shit. Or like a Scary Movie with the Wayans brothers, how it was a spoof of all of the real scary movies. That's what this is, basically. That's exactly what Thor Love and Thunder is. It's like a spoof, like a parody type movie. So it's not a serious Thor movie. It's just some bullshit they threw together so they can make some money and so they can introduce some characters and some storylines, basically. Also, too, keep in mind, I've been watching movies since the 80s. I was born in 1985. So I've been watching movies since the 80s. A lot of these storylines, a lot of these plot ideas, a lot of these movie arrangements, like how the scenes are arranged to make the movie make sense in a certain order. A lot of the jokes, a lot of this stuff I've seen over and over and over again through many different genres of movies. It's the formula, basically. This is the same formula Hollywood used, the same exact formula, so they can create a blockbuster movie. It's like the formula that they know this certain formula is gonna generate millions of dollars of revenue. It's like a Matrix formula, basically. We're gonna mix action with love, so that way we can get the men and the women and the boys and the girls. We're gonna put superheroes so we can get all the kids. We're gonna put science fiction, space technology, so we can get all the science nerds and the bookworms interested. And then we're just gonna throw together a cliche formula of a movie. It was all cliche. I've seen this over and over again in certain movies. So that is part of the reason why I give it a 6 out of 10. Other than that,